The wind swept across the dry plains, carrying with it the cries of a desperate mother. Clara Jennings clutched her son, Ethan, as the sheriff's men waited by the wagon. Her hands shook, her eyes red and raw from days without sleep. The world around her, her husband's old ranch, the dying corral, the wilted fields, was slipping through her fingers like dust. "Please," she begged, voice cracking under the weight of a pain words could barely hold. "Don't take my child, he's all I've got." The sheriff's jaw tightened, his hat low over tired eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The law's the law. Your husband's debts. I don't care about the debts," she screamed. "I'll work. I'll clean. I'll sew. All." The lawman looked away. Orders came down from the court. "The boy's next of kin lives up north. He goes there." Her arms tightened around Ethan. He was only 7. Too small to understand the word debt, but old enough to feel the terror in his mother's trembling voice. "Mama," he whispered, "don't let them take me." She pressed her forehead to his, sobbing so hard she could hardly breathe. Around her, the townsfolk stood in uneasy silence. They'd seen plenty of heartbreak before, but nothing like this. Then, the sound of spurs cut through the silence. A tall man stepped out from behind the sheriff's wagon. He wore a dusted brown coat, his hat low, shadowing his face. Luke Kerrigan, the quiet rancher from the far edge of town. Few spoke to him, fewer knew his story. He was a man carved out of silence, strong, stern, and solitary. He didn't say a word at first. Just watched the scene, his expression unreadable. Then, slow and steady, he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document. He tossed it at the sheriff's feet. The pouch of coins that followed landed with a dull clink. "That cover it?" he asked, voice deep and calm. The sheriff bent, opened the pouch, and his eyes widened. "Luke, this is more than what's owed." "Good," Luke replied. "Then there's no reason to take the boy." Clara's sobs quieted. Her eyes lifted, confusion and disbelief mixing with tears. "Why?" she whispered. Luke tipped his hat slightly toward her. "Because no one should lose their family over money." The lawman looked between them, then sighed. "Debt's cleared. The boy stays." And just like that, it was over. The men left, the crowd dispersed, and Clara found herself standing in the quiet dust, her son in her arms and her heart still racing. Luke turned to leave, his boots crunching on the dry earth. "Wait," she called out. "I don't know how to thank you." He paused but didn't turn around. "Don't need thanks, ma'am. Just keep him safe." Then he mounted his horse and rode off into the horizon, a lone figure swallowed by the setting sun. Part 2. The Promise of Tomorrow. Days turned into weeks, and Clara tried to rebuild what little she had. But the world had taken more than her home, it had taken her spirit. Every night, she'd tuck Ethan in and stare out the window toward the North Ridge, where Luke's ranch sat in silent distance. Then one morning, she received a letter. It wasn't signed, but she knew who it was from. "Work's plenty up at Kerrigan Ranch. Housekeepers needed. Room and board included." Clara folded the note with trembling hands. It wasn't charity, it was an offer. One she couldn't afford to refuse. By dusk, she and Ethan stood at Luke's gate. The ranch stretched wide. Rolling fields, open skies, and the faint sound of horses in the paddock. Luke met them halfway, his hat in his hands, his usual silence wrapped around him like armor. "You didn't have to come," he said quietly. She smiled, though it trembled. "You didn't have to save us." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, "Guess we both did what we had to." She began working at the ranch. Cooking, cleaning, tending to the gardens, patching old quilts. Ethan followed Luke everywhere, asking questions about horses and fences, filling the empty ranch with laughter it hadn't heard in years. At night, when the sky turned soft and golden, Clara would sit by the porch and watch Luke fixing a fence, or calming a restless mare. His silence no longer felt cold, it felt steady. Safe. One evening, as thunder rolled in from the west, Ethan came running inside. "Mama, Mr. Kerrigan's out there. He's hurt." Clara rushed outside to find Luke kneeling near the barn, holding his arm, blood seeping through a torn sleeve. "It's nothing," he muttered, brushing it off. "You call this nothing?" she snapped, kneeling beside him. Her hands were gentle but firm as she wrapped his arm with cloth torn from her apron. "You help everyone but never let anyone help you." He looked at her then. Really looked at her. The rain fell softly, dampening her hair, catching the light of the lantern. "Been a long time since anyone's tried," he said quietly. Their eyes met, the silence between them no longer empty but full of something fragile, something new. From that night on, things began to change. Luke started joining Clara and Ethan for supper. He listened to their laughter, their stories, even smiled sometimes. He taught Ethan how to ride, how to mend fences, how to listen to the land. And Clara, she began to feel something she thought she'd buried long ago: hope. One late evening, after putting Ethan to bed, she stepped onto the porch. The moonlight painted the ranch silver, the air still after a long day. Luke was there, leaning against the railing, his hat resting beside him. "Ethan's growing fast," he said. "Got his mother's heart." Clara smiled softly. "And your patience." A pause. Then he turned to her, his eyes gentle but guarded. "You don't have to stay here forever, Clara. When you're ready, I'll help you find a place of your own." She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "And if this already feels like home." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. The night air thickened between them, heavy with words left unsaid. Luke's hand brushed hers, hesitant, rough, but real. "You deserve better than this old ranch," he murmured. She shook her head, tears glinting in her eyes. "You gave me back my family, Luke. There's nothing better than that." He swallowed hard, then took a slow step closer. "You sure?" Clara nodded, smiling through her tears. For the first time in a long while. The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of rain and wild sage. And there, under the quiet glow of the moon, the silent rancher who'd once lived in the shadow of his own loneliness finally found the courage to speak the words his heart had long kept hidden. "Then stay," he whispered. "Both of you." And she did. The ranch, once silent and cold, began to hum with life again. Morning laughter, evening songs, the echo of hooves across the fields. Luke had given them a home, but in truth, it was Clara and Ethan who'd given him back his heart. Sometimes salvation doesn't come with grand gestures, it comes with quiet acts of love, born in the dust and the dawn of second chances.